Life can be hard, and we've all faced those moments that seem to stop us dead in our tracks. But what if those moments of difficulty, the bad news, could actually be a springboard for something greater? I'm Cam Garvin, and each week I'll bring you stories of extraordinary resilience and conversations about lives and ideas that are productive. This is the Productive Lives Podcast. Welcome to the podcast. Today's conversation is one I think we all need, especially in a time when disagreement feels louder, sharper, and more personal than ever. Our guest today is Kevin Huhn, a thoughtful blogger who writes on issues of culture, faith, politics, and public life. Kevin contributes to the Phoenix Preacher platform, where we'll talk more about, where he explores how to engage in ideas and peoples that don't always agree with him. Kevin brings a really steady, charitable voice to conversations that are often anything but calm in some of his reactions. But I'm grateful to have him here today with us. He's a friend of mine. I got to officiate his wedding, which was a privilege. So we've known each other for years and just kind of reacquainted the last couple of years. So welcome, Kevin. I'm glad you're here.
Thanks, Cam. I really appreciate you having me on. And not the typical thing for me. I'm just, nobody who writes a little bit here and there, but some people, including yourself, find it helpful and good in some ways. So, yeah, I'm glad to be here.
Good. Aren't we all nobodies that, somebody may listen to this? So if we could be an encouragement, that's great. So tell me a little bit about you, Kevin, your family. What do you do and where do you live and all that?
Grew up in a Christian home. I couldn't tell you a time that I can remember not believing in Jesus. So from little on, probably said the sinner's prayer about 10, 15, 20 times to make sure, along the way. That probably ended sometime in maybe high school. But yeah, I've been involved in church activities, Christian college, as you can see. I always have to represent that.
Yeah. That's good.
Yeah, with Cam, with all your caring people you always have around. So got to give a little bit different flavor at times.
That's great. It's great. It's good.
It's always been an evangelical stream. Although over the years, I've, appreciated reading and learning from other streams of Christianity,
Yes.
kind of broadening my horizons. But, my life has always pretty much been in the evangelical world, the evangelical culture. Live in Philadelphia now. I grew up in Berks County, but when I graduated college, got a job in Philadelphia and have been in this area since.
That's right.
Married 22 years now with two girls, one in college, the other one in high school.
You're a Messiah grad. She's going to Messiah. Is your other daughter going to go to Messiah?
We'll see. She's still in ninth grade, so she's got some time to decide. So she wants to be a radiologist. So so you got to go all the medical stuff, and Messiah doesn't have a big program for that. So we'll see. But maybe when she gets closer in time, realize how much schooling that takes. maybe she'll have a change in mind. But we'll see. She's ambitious anyway.
That's great. What do you do for a living?
I've been an engineer. That's what I got my degree in at college, and just have been doing various engineering jobs over the years, different companies. Place I'm at right now, I've been there close to 3 years now, and it's a startup company. We generally are coached not to say too much because we're not in the market yet, and they're trying to keep everything kind of hush-hush until that happens. But, in the news, it's a medical device. It's got some promise, so we'll see.
That's cool. No, I've talked to guys like that. I said, I can't tell you where I work because it's coming out. And I'm like, okay, I don't want you to get fired before it gets to market. So that's great.
Yeah. No government secrets or anything, but trade secrets. A company that doesn't want anyone else stealing some of the ideas and things we're doing. So.
No, that's smart. It's you always think of espionage overseas, but there's a lot of corporate, hey, what kind of ideas do you have and how can I steal them? So I got it. Well, thanks for introducing us to that. So engineer, you've been in church, you grew up in the church, you're married, you live in Philly. Kevin, was writing always something that you were drawn to, or did it come later into your life? Because I don't remember when we were way back when, You are being
Yeah.
a writer. Maybe you're writing secretly. I didn't know about it, but now
Yeah.
there's so many platforms. So how did that come around?
It's kind of something that evolved over time. First of all, I've always been able to express my ideas, my thoughts, my feelings better through written word than speaking. So probably even as we go through this, I'll stumble at times, and probably some of that stuff will get edited out anyway. But
That's right.
I've always been better at putting my thoughts together when I had time to think them through and write them out. Yeah, more platforms. I mean, when me and you were together a lot of years, the internet was still a relatively new thing. There was no social media.
Yeah,
Blogs were
it's
probably barely
crazy.
a thing, just starting up. So I didn't have any avenues to write. But as time has gone on, I started writing some on social media, Facebook primarily, and also at, like you mentioned, the Phoenix Preacher website blog. It's a blog I got involved with, I don't know, many years ago. I gotta think it was probably about around 2009 or so. So
Oh,
it's
okay.
yeah, I've been involved in it's a unique place, community there. Changes over the years, but Michael Noonan, who started that blog and still runs it to this day, he encouraged me to start writing. So I do that from time to time there. Some seasons I'm writing more than others. Sometimes it starts to feel repetitive, so I just keep that to Facebook then.
I gotcha.
So the blog people don't get the repetitiveness all the time, but so I've been doing that, and a lot of it kind of came. The types of things I write about too is, like I said, I've been involved with the evangelical world, evangelical culture, the churches, my entire life, and I think as time has gone on, I still very much hold to many typical evangelical beliefs and everything, but I've become more sensitive to some of the other stuff that goes on that's not so great. And that started to disturb me a little bit more and a little bit more as time went on. And things seemed to increasingly get worse, just with abuse and corruption and things that gets covered up and condescension and all that type of stuff, and especially what we've seen in politics, especially over the last 10 years or so. It's really has expedited in an exponential way, seemingly. So it's kind of drawn me out to write more to those types of topics, where I try to keep my focus on Jesus, on the Christian faith, even if it's dealing with some political issue or happening, which is often the case, not always, but often the case where I'm writing things. I don't really want to write about politics. I don't like politics, but
Oh,
I
that's
I
interesting.
feel God has given me a gift of discernment in some degree, of not to the extent that some Christians online love to claim that discernment gift, and they're constantly heresy hunters,
Right.
finding every little thing wrong here and there in people's beliefs. And that's not me, but more of along the lines of being able to see things that are happening, and in light of God's word, is this right or wrong? And a lot of times there's a lot of gray and
Yep.
nuance and everything in between,
Sure.
but to be able to have some discernment. And yeah, like I said, things have over time, I've become more aware of things going on in the evangelical world and the culture, and like, hey guys, I'm right here with you. I agree with a lot of your concerns and things going on that aren't so good, but you know what, there's a lot of stuff going on our own camp that's not so good, and a lot of times it's in a reaction to stuff that we're concerned about going on in the world. Again, the concern's good, to try to bring justice or righteousness to certain situations. Everything is good, but a lot of the times the way we go about it isn't so healthy. And those are the types of things I will write to more often.
I appreciate that. It's also too, I think if you write to, I call it tribes or, different groups of people, segments of
Yeah,
society, it's easier to throw stones at somebody else. But when you're in it, I think you have a unique ability growing up in a Christian home and evangelical, and even that evangelical has been, what does that really mean, right, anymore? But I got
yeah,
the tenets of the faith, believe in the Bible, believe in Jesus. But you can speak into that tribe because you're part of that tribe.
yeah,
And I'm not calling you a prophet because I don't know about all that, but
yeah,
some prophetic voices. I've been reading the prophets, and they're not always welcomed, except in hindsight. Like, oh, wow, that guy said that years ago. He was right. But in the moment, you're getting blasted. And
yeah,
so Was there any specific thing in your season of life that you started doing that more, writing more? I saw you on Facebook, of course, and then with the blog. But was there anything that kind of like, boy, I gotta ratchet up a notch, or I just got to talk a little bit more specific to these things?
I don't know if there's like one moment in time I can speak to. It's been more of an, like I said, an evolution. Probably the biggest time period I could speak to is, I mean, back during 2016 with the election and presidency and everything going on, and things really seem to be coming to a head, and still seems like things are coming to a head, that, more and more stuff just keeps happening. But since that time period, just all the more with the way Christians are interacting online in social media, in the church, and stuff that sometimes you hear from the pulpit that's like, man, this really isn't the Christian faith. This is something else that's going on. It's been tied up with the Christian faith, and it's not good. I'm certainly not accusing all churches, all pastors. I mean, there's a lot of faithful churches, a lot of faithful pastors, but I think that type of thing has become more frequent, more common, and much more loud. The loudest voices always get the attention, and the extremes get the most attention and everything. But one of the things that's been concerning to me is, like, those voices have been really influential over the last several years, and it's pulling more people to those extremes. And like you're saying, with different tribes and everything, it has very much become us versus them
Yes. Yep.
attitude. And we got to do whatever we can to defeat them, because we've determined that they are the enemy. And it's no holds barred to whatever it takes to
Yeah.
defeat them. And
Yeah.
again, there's certainly problems on with them, but there's some good things with them too. And
Yeah.
I look at the same for our side, and
Yeah.
I don't even look at it as sides, but that's how it's been chopped up in this
Yeah.
our culture today. And there's lots of problems on our side. And the ironic thing is, like you're saying, if when you speak to some of these things, people don't like it, and they treat me almost as if I'm from the other side. I'm part of the enemy camp. It's like, oh no, I'm
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
I've always been part. I haven't changed much in my beliefs and thoughts, but I'm seeing a lot of other stuff that's changing. It's not for the good, and trying to speak to that.
And it's interesting in church history or history itself. There's always been schisms. There's always been disagreements, even to the
Hmm.
extent where they burn you as a heretic, which is
Yeah,
horrible. And crusades, all that stuff that is not, as we would agree. I think even our listeners, is that's not true Christianity. That's not
yeah,
Jesus.
mm,
Jesus strongly disagreed with religious leaders, which I was a part of, clergy, and he hung out
yeah,
with the sinners and the people that society wouldn't do. But you're right; it's like it seems like it's louder now, and maybe because we have all these different platforms, even podcasts.
yeah. That certainly has been a big contributor to it.
Yeah, it doesn't mean they're the best voice, but they could be the loudest or they have the most money. So, yeah,
Hmm.
I agree with that. I think some of it I want to ask you, being an engineer. Some of the things I think we have today is probably a lack of critical thinking. Now, to me, critical thinking, and I don't always am a critical thinker, but thinking through logically that 2 plus 2 is 4 on the moon, Japan, Bermuda, it's still 4. There's truth, there's consistency, there's evidence.
Yeah.
And it just seems like I said, it's a post-Christian world, which is an advantage because we can tell our pluralistic society, there's the Christian view. We have to defend it in a good way. We have to convince
Hmm.
people, not hit them over the head like
Yeah.
the Middle Ages, but hey, we want to dialogue with you. And I think that's where you're coming from. That's where I like to come from. I think that makes people's lives more productive if you're doing that.
Yeah.
So, how have you been encouraged? How have you been discouraged? So, how have you been encouraged with some of the dialogue you have? And sometimes I get it, Kev. Even sometimes on like Facebook, if I say something, someone's going to say something, and you got to be
Yeah.
prepared to have the time and the intelligence, which I think you have, the intelligence to go, let me just talk to you, and they could blast you personally. You're like, that's, and sometimes you got to stop it. But how have you been encouraged, discouraged? How have you navigated that? Think about our listeners that may not be from a Christian background and maybe disagree with what we're talking about. That's fine.
Sure.
How have you handled that?
Yeah. not always easy. Kind of like you were saying at the beginning of this segment was, I'm an engineer, so I have that logical thinking, and those types of things comes more naturally to me to think things through logically
Yeah.
and get evidence and facts and proof of things that, my weaker side is more on the emotional side. So those are things I've learned more over the years, whether online or in personal life, of how to handle and react to those things. But I do think a lot of what we're seeing in the culture and the things that happen is because people are reacting more emotionally
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
fears,
Mm.
to, concerns of, things happening. And it causes an emotional reaction. And sometimes, the critical thinking goes out the door. I mean, we can even think back of the church historian Mark Knoll, who wrote The Scandal of the Evangelical Mind back, was that the 80s? He wrote that,
Probably. Yeah.
maybe
Yeah. Yeah.
early 90s,
I wasn't
and
alive.
this,
No, I
yeah,
was.
yeah. This and the premise, just as the book starts, is the scandal of the evangelical mind is that there's not much of a evangelical mind. I think there's been some roads that have been taken have gotten that better in some ways, but in a lot of ways, especially with social media and everything, it seems like we're almost taking a step back from that, and that we're not really using critical thinking skills in our minds and everything to a full degree, nearly as much as it could be. But anyway, yeah, to answer your question as far as what encourages, discourages, things I've run into, certainly the encouragement is when people give me some positive feedback, because it feels like a lot of times the negative feedback is so much more. And maybe it's really not.
Yeah.
It probably is if I would count it up, but it feels probably so much more than it is, and that's just human nature. The negative affects us a lot more than the positive. But it's good to hear those positive feedback of people saying they've been encouraged by what I've said. People reach out to me and say that I was really struggling with this, and I was so glad to hear your voice addressing it, things like that. I even had a friend from college who I've been in touch with here and there over the years, but out of the blue, she just sent me a voice message a couple of weeks ago and just saying that she's so encouraged by what I do. She's a woman of color, and she went to Messiah, which is very white in a
Right.
lot of ways. They're always trying to increase that diversity, but it's not so easy to do. And there's things that she struggled with there that I probably at that time I had no idea. I
Right.
was
That's
clueless
right.
on, and have come to realize more and more of cultural things that could just make people uneasy or be offensive to people that we didn't even realize or whatever. But anyway, she sent me this voice message just saying she's so encouraged by what I do, and she knows it's a cost to me, and thankful that I'm willing to pay that price to be a faithful voice of Jesus. So things like that
No, that's
really
great.
encourage me. The discouragement, yeah, is a lot of times a disagreement, and I don't have a problem with disagreement per se.
Right.
It's just so often it feels like when I do get the disagreement, when I do get the pushback, it's more of that us versus them mentality that I'm saying something that they don't like, that they don't agree with, and I got to be taken down. And it becomes a lot more conflict than it needs to be, a lot more attacking than it needs to be. And, over the years, I have learned different ways to try to deal with that type of thing a little bit better. You try to find common ground, you try to find points of agreement, validate, their concerns. A lot of times it's, again, like I was saying earlier, it's like I share the same concerns with stuff that's going on in this
Yeah.
world that's, not Christian in a lot of ways. And, try to find those things, try to keep things on issue, you know,
Yeah.
keep speaking to the issue. Don't make it personal.
Yeah. That goes south quick when people, you're an idiot. And you're like, well, thank you. I don't know. Go from there.
Yeah. Try to keep it on topic of what it is. Try to point out not only things you agree with the other person, but even if you know good things about them, try to validate things that are good about them and stuff. And, on occasion, those types of techniques seem to help the conversation to be more productive, more constructive.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, what I find a lot of times is seemingly if people are coming with that mindset of attack and, I'm on of the enemy, or, a lot of times it might be things I'm speaking to that they know that they're personally supportive of or involved in, or behavior that they exhibit, they probably get pretty defensive too.
Sure. Sure.
And unfortunately, it kind of takes two to have a good
Conf-
conversation,
That's right.
and if one side is just so focused on winning and knocking down the enemy, knocking down what they see as wrong, or is getting in the way of their goals, their end goals, it's hard, it's difficult, and those times can be pretty discouraging, feeling pretty beat up when when I'm getting attacked personally in a lot of ways, when motives are being implied to me, is like, no, that's not what I'm thinking. I don't think that. I don't. But a lot of times there's just no stopping. They'll
Right.
just keep insisting on that. They won't stay on the topic, especially if it's something that they don't really have good points to,
Right.
and they'll want to argue about other things. Like, well, okay, I understand that. I have concerns there too, but that's not what I was addressing here. I was addressing this other topic, and so yeah, it can get pretty discouraging. Loss of some relationships over time. A lot of it is people that maybe I didn't even necessarily know that well, or I don't really see anymore besides online. But still, it still hurts to lose those relationships. I've had a good number of people, unfriend me or block me on Facebook over the years. I don't know if the ones who, are obvious hurt more, or the ones that just quietly
Right.
unfriend me. All of a sudden, I haven't seen this person in my feed for quite a while, and I look up their profile and, I'm not friends with them anymore.
Standing for truth often means standing alone. Kevin's story reminds us of why we keep going despite the pushback. But how do we actually have these hard conversations? In our next episode, Kevin shares his engineering toolbox for de-escalating conflict and why we get so emotional over things like the Philadelphia Eagles. Go figure. Thank you for listening to the Productive Lives podcast. You can expect new episodes every Monday, and if you like the show, please subscribe and leave a review wherever you get your podcasts. This helps others like you find the show. The Productive Lives podcast is supported by Productive Lives, where our mission is people serving people, and our vision is to motivate people to improve their lives and the lives of others through servant living and leadership. If you want to live a productive life and help improve the lives of others, visit our website for more information, productivelives.org. The Productive Lives podcast is produced by Studio D Podcast Production and hosted by me, Cam Garvin. I'll see you next week for more stories of resilience and conversations about lives and ideas that are productive.